Yo, what's up? So, us, the Overwatch community, are kind of in a really tense state right now. Overwatch 2 was announced in 2019, and here we are, Q1 of 2022. Still no release date, and no new information since September of last year, where we're told that the Overwatch League is going to be playing Overwatch 2 in April. So here we are, so close to this next big update for Overwatch 2, but we don't know what it's gonna be, or what Blizzard's next move is. But as we should know, content creators were at a secret meeting with Blizzard where they talked about Blizzard's next step for Overwatch, and they're all saying really positive stuff about it, but obviously they can't give any details. This can give us a lot of hope for what's to come, but then we also got the news that Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, which is a huge win as well. Some people are scared about it, but overall this is a positive change. But the question is still unanswered. What is Blizzard's next step with Overwatch? And then, of course, after I wrote this entire script, a demo version of Overwatch 2 is found on the Battle.net launcher. And then the day before I'm about to upload the video, this leak shows up, which pretty much sets everything else in stone. So I was correct, because I truly believed that Overwatch 2 was going to have a beta in late February or March, or at least have it announced, and here is why. It makes no sense for Overwatch League to be broadcasted on a new game without the player base having access to it. So, Overwatch goes into beta in content creator and pros hands, where you can then get drop keys from their streams. So now you can access the beta, just like what they did with Valorant. And this would build up huge hype for the game and the esport too. It just makes perfect sense to do so. But on YouTube, it shows that Overwatch 2 is coming out in 2023. So the beta might last a majority of the rest of the year, and the full game come out next year. Even if they don't have a beta this early, which I highly doubt, I still think that Overwatch 2 is, in my eyes, pretty much impossible to be a bad game, and I know that sounds like a really exaggerated take, especially from an Overwatch player, but I've picked apart so much information about Overwatch 2 from different sources and interviews, and there is so much that this game is meant to deliver that I feel most people don't know because Blizzard hasn't done a good job at communicating these things. Probably the biggest confusion and question is, why make a sequel? Why not just gradually integrate the content to Overwatch 1? Well, Blizzard made Overwatch 2 at first just to be Overwatch with PvE in it, and it would play on a new engine and kinda just merge with Overwatch 1 as a side-by-side. But the more time that Blizzard had working on the game, the more they changed around and experimented with things. So Overwatch 2 is now meant to be a complete replacement for Overwatch 1. It's kinda like how there's Fortnite and then they upgraded it to Chapter 2 and 3.
We really want Overwatch 2 to feel like the next evolution, a true sequel to the first game, not an add-on. It's not a small part. It's not an extension of the original game. This is an evolution and a replacement to the original game, and I think it's exciting.
They basically looked at Overwatch as a game and rebuilt it from the ground up. So they started looking at and reconsidering every single detail and element of the game. It will be a much more polished and more up-to-date version of the game that we have today. And obviously we can see that they're making huge changes like 5v5, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. Another big concern we see is the monetization system. We don't know what it is yet, but I think that it is basically guaranteed that Overwatch 2 will be free to play for everyone, even if you don't own Overwatch 1. They could also make the PvE free, but they might have that part cost money like they did with Halo Infinite, but it's not guaranteed. Overwatch was made at a time where loot boxes were still very common, but they might get rid of them entirely because they are fading out of the gaming industry. Hopefully you'll still be able to get all of your skins and other cosmetics for free, but once again, there is still no guarantee, seeing how literally every other game makes you pay with in-game credits. I personally want an Overwatch Battle Pass, even if I do have to pay for it, but it would be a very cool thing for Blizzard to do if everyone just had a free universal Battle Pass, which is something I could see them doing. A lot of people say that the PvP doesn't seem new, and honestly, I get it, but the community hasn't actually got their hands on it yet, so I'd say it's way too quick to judge. Especially because what we've seen so far has been extremely early alpha versions of the game, and with less characters in the cast of Overwatch 1. They have a lot of work to do before it can be considered playable and finished, so we haven't seen the full picture of its potential, but here is a rapid fire list of things we can expect from PvP. 5v5 with one tank, which means a rework to the entire game balance. They're working on things such as getting rid of a lot of BS abilities in the game and focusing on individual skill. Pretty much every character in the game is going to be reworked so that they can kind of play on their own and sustain themselves, but this doesn't necessarily mean that teamwork is dead. Some characters getting heavily reworked and some of them changing roles. Introduction of role passives, a whole new cast of maps equivalent to how many Overwatch 1 started with. Maps will be much more open for flanks instead of having small choke points. At least one new core game mode, which is push, and no more 2CP. Completely new UI for every single character. Upgraded engine with heavy detail to combat feel, and I'm expecting about 10 heroes to release on launch, but Blizzard owes us about 13 or 14 heroes since Echo. Much less CC in the game, but tanks will usually have them now, and a new clan system implying tournaments or team queue, but this isn't confirmed. And probably most importantly, Overwatch 2 PvP is going to be focusing much more on competitive balance. The Overwatch team is finally going to make much more skill to reward type gameplay because now they have somewhere in the game that you can play any hero you want casually because now they have the PvE modes. Speaking of which, it's a pretty big possibility that the co-op modes could carry this entire game. The Overwatch team has been thinking about PvE ever since the game first came out. That's why the lore is actually pretty detailed. I mean, think about it. The company that made World of Warcraft and Diablo franchises are making a highly replayable and story-driven PvE experience for the Overwatch universe. That on paper just automatically makes it very hard for Blizzard to mess it up, so let's talk about what it has to bring. Firstly, story missions are the campaign and story of the game. Cassidy's New Blood comic is building up to the start of the campaign in Overwatch 2. As far as we know, story missions will have 4, maybe 5 people play as the many heroes in the future Overwatch storyline. We will actually have more than 4 characters to choose from in each mission, which brings up the fact that you can take different routes in the campaign depending on who you choose, so it also changes the dialogue between characters and possibly the endings. Blizzard is gonna make as many heroes possible to play in the campaign as long as it makes sense. Story missions will also have difficulties scaling from normal to legendary, but Jeff Kaplan, when are you coming back with the milk, my man, has said before that they are planning on making harder modes and making it more competitive. On top of that, all story missions will have beginning and ending cutscenes. I imagine most of the campaign will be on new maps, probably made specifically for the story, but they might bring in bigger versions of old ones too. Now, hero missions are going to be the endlessly replayable missions that level up your character to make them OP and raise them to their maximum potential, which you can't do in PvP because you have to worry about balance. Blizzard is going all out on these talent trees. We're going to have at least 3 different paths per hero in these missions that you can play whatever you want. And it's not only going to be 4 people necessarily, because there is footage of hero missions having 3 to 5 players in a game. Hero missions can take place on any multiplayer map in the game, and probably more. They are all on a map with their own specific time zones, and all of them are getting new areas that we haven't seen before. Once again, difficulty will scale from normal to legendary, and are most definitely going to have harder modes than that. These missions will have many different random objectives that you have to do and survive till the end to complete. Some of the objectives that they've shown off have included things like killing enemies, obtaining objectives around the map, a wall of death, defending a point, and much more to come. And these missions are truly brought to life by the enemies that you fight. The Overwatch team has put a lot of time and resources into the enemies you're fighting, so it never feels like the game gets too repetitive, and it really sells this superhero fantasy that you're playing. So far, we've seen different types of units like grunts, elites, aerial, objective, artillery, boss units, and probably more. Now, what's interesting is that we still haven't seen much of Talon in Overwatch 2 yet, but obviously they will be a big part in both the story and gameplay. Obviously, we need to see all of the different and new Talon units, like what we saw with Null Sector, but it's still unclear if we'll be fighting Talon in hero missions. But now that I think about it, it would be really weird for a hero like Reaper and Widowmaker to be fighting Talon in a mission. But so what? Does that really mean that we're not gonna have any Omnic or robot heroes to play as? Come on now. And there are still many new aspects of Overwatch to come with the sequel. Every Overwatch 1 character is getting a new and updated look to show off some sort of evolution. Clans, like I mentioned earlier, have a lot of new ways to socialize with the community, and I'm excited to see what else Blizzard has to surprise us with. Because I've pretty much only talked about what they've officially announced. Imagine what they haven't told us yet. Things like career profiles, game medals, portraits, and gold guns are all meant to be reworked, and I personally think that gold guns are going to be in PvE now. If they don't do that, it would be pretty interesting for you to get a gold gun every new border or something like that. But speaking of borders, I actually really want to keep my shiny gold border in Overwatch 2 because I like the accomplishment from it. You know, it shows dedication, but they have talked about reworking that kind of thing so that it doesn't make people more toxic and competitive. And there's a whole bunch of more news that we can expect in the next coming weeks. So anyways, I hope that you learned something new from this and are a little bit more excited for what Overwatch 2 has to bring like I am. And if you want more content like this, then make sure to subscribe and like the video. But yeah, see ya.
Twist.